All right, everyone, what's up? Today is November the 29th, 2018, and this is Ryan from SellThatOption doing a stock market analysis for today. As with every day, let's go ahead and start in our spiders, or S&P 500 ETF. We were down just 0.25%, but an interesting day, and one that I think we should definitely spend some time talking about. Okay, so let's first take a look at this candle. All right, so what does this candle tell us, right? Basic candlestick analysis tells us that this was a day of indecision. Okay, this is what is called basically a doji candle, in which the open and the close are really close together, and there's a wick, right? A candle wick on either side. Okay, and so interestingly, we challenged the 200-day simple moving average right up here and got shot back down. Okay, we are also right along this trend line that we've drawn, and I'm assuming a lot of other folks have drawn a similar trend line to this one. We had very, very little volume today, so when we're looking at the amount of times we've been this less volume, you can see that at least in the last 2 months, this is one of our lower volume days for sure. We're above this 9 EMA, but we're in between the 50 simple moving average and the 200 simple moving average. The 200 being this less volatile light blue line. Okay, we're also still kind of waiting on this death cross to happen. Is this death cross going to happen? It very well might. And if it does, we're going to have to be prepared for that. I'm not going to pick, right? I'm not going to pick because there's just, everyone was really indecisive here. Okay, but what I think we can do, interestingly, is go into the SPY. Okay, so let's actually bring up, we're waiting for the data to pull. Here we go. For those of you all that are in Thinkorswim but haven't seen this down here, I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes talking about the option statistics. Okay, and so you can see here that there were 1,500 puts that were sold versus 1,300 calls. Okay, so that means that investors on the whole, the put side of the house traded more than the call side of the house. And so what does this mean? It means that perhaps there still is some bearish sentiment here in the market. Okay, so there's a lot of really good information that you can glean from this. Okay, and so you can see here the current IV percentiles 34%, and so you are able to really get a decent eye as to what's going on in the market beyond potentially just looking at the charts. Okay, but back to the charts. Let's get out of the spiders. Let's take a look at the Qs. Okay, so as you can see here, the Qs also are flirting with that trend line. We're much, much closer to a death cross. Okay, so what do we have? We have our 200 simple moving average at 172.43. We have our 50-day simple moving average at 172.98. So we are 55 cents away from a death cross. Okay, certainly bearish. You also see a doji here on this particular candle above the 9 EMA, but still that trend line's acting as resistance. So if this death cross continues to happen, it's going to be super, super interesting. Okay, again, a day when it came to volume in the last 2 months or so, still one of our lower days when it came to volume. So a little bit of indecision there as well. Over in the diamonds, again, this is a very strong doji, right? Like this is a doji. We were only down 25 cents or a tenth of a percentage. We had a really long upper wick. We had a really long lower wick. We're above still the 200-day simple moving average and above the 9 EMA. Okay, and so that's worth noting, but this 50-day simple moving average might act as resistance, and we've still got quite a little bit on this particular trend line still before we're looking at that. Let's go to our kind of leading indice, and what do we have? Another pseudo doji. We were down 1/4 of a percentage point. The death cross again has already happened, and we're seeing ever more difference between our 50-day simple moving average and our 200-day simple moving average. our 9 EMA acted as support today. So as you can see here, the bottom of that candle went right up against that 9 EMA, and the 9 EMA acted as support, which is really, really interesting. Another thing that's interesting is we are nearing, every day that gets closer, we're continuing to near kind of an inflection point, right? An inflection point to see which way the market's going to go here. We're beginning to run out of real estate a little bit in regards to a potential breakout or a potential breakdown of the Russell 2000 ETF. Volatility today. All volatility today. Interesting day. It spiked up. I think at one point it was close to up to 10% today. When I looked at one point this afternoon, I think that it was up 10%. Well, I mean, let's take a look at the daily. 1 day, 1 minute. Okay, so it was about 11 o'clock, and then we just lost any type of volatility the rest of the day. Well, waiting for data. Okay. And then, of course, the VIX, VXX. Interestingly, even though we were down in the S&P 500 and there were more puts, of course, that means that your VIX is likely going to be up depending on the level of contango. However, it feels that even though we were only down a little bit in the S&P 500, that folks weren't really buying, that we were only going to be down a little bit in the S&P 500 because volatility continues to be a little elevated. All right, let's take a look at any things that are worth noting here. Oil, I think when we've been talking a lot about oil had a really interesting day. So here we are in oil. We were up when we were trading right around 11. I thought that, perhaps the bottom was again in, but we have another pseudo doji with a longer wick on the top than a longer wick on the bottom, which suggests some level of weakness, and investors perhaps, or the bulls perhaps, not necessarily being 100% bought into that rally. So we'll see what continues to happen with USO. And other than that, there wasn't a ton of major movement. China was down a percentage point. So let's finish this by taking a look at implied volatility percentiles. We do have some elevated implied volatility percentiles. Russia has implied volatility pretty high, but we're actually not seeing a ton of premium. I actually looked at selling options today in RSX, but the premium just wasn't what I wanted for me to typically trade that. Let's go into our futures just real quick to take a look and see what our futures are doing. So what do we have? Where are our futures? Futures, here we are. All right, so futures are down across the board. Not too much. We are at volatility is up a percentage. Russell is down a fifth of a percentage. Gold is just down. It's basically even 5 100ths of a percentage point. NASDAQ's down, and the ENS or S&P 500 minis are also down between basically a fifth of a percentage point. So not a ton of movement here, but that is where we are at. I hope you all took a look at this and kind of are beginning to see how somebody might analyze these markets. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me at Ryan, RYAN, at SellThatOption.com. Feel free to take a look around. Let us know if you have any questions or suggestions for our growing community of options traders. Stay humble, stay hungry, and here's to our success.